From the Diving Board is a show hosted by me, Charlie Chats, dedicated to decoding digital culture by unpacking the hidden politics behind the screen. Hello, welcome back to my channel and also welcome to my podcast. We are now available on Spotify and Apple Music and wherever else you stream your podcasts with the show From the Diving Board. I am so excited. This is so exciting, guys. So you can now watch and listen to these video essays and commentaries. I've posted the backlog on Spotify as well. So that just means that you get more flexibility with where you listen to my content, which is really exciting. I also want to shamelessly plug, I'm going to post a little bit more on Instagram. So I have linked my Instagram for Charlie Chats in my description and also in the description of all my videos and Spotify episodes, so you can find that there. And the benefit of following is just that you'll get a little bit more information. I'm going to post some of my sources for each video and podcast, and you can be a little bit more interactive. We can have conversations over there and you'll be the first to know when things are uploaded, which is really exciting. Another thing, we can address the elephant in the room, which is that I have a microphone now. Anyway, I'm back and I am so excited to be delivering some more content. We're going to be diving in, pardon the pun, to a bunch of new content ideas and trends and online cultural moments, because a lot has happened since I've been away and we need to unpack this together, guys, because this is crazy. I think today's episode is something that's very dear to my heart and I'm very passionate about. We're covering topics of feminism, the rise in conservatism online. We're looking at irony and meta-irony among Gen Z and whether or not that's encouraging these conservative behaviors or whether or not it's just all in good fun. We're looking at some really interesting topics and this episode is definitely blending, as I usually like to do, politics with online culture. So I hope we can spark a really interesting conversation and make a bit of a splash in the discourse. So if you're interested in this type of content, keep on listening, keep on watching. Let's jump in. There becomes a point in the late hours of the evening when I start to be fed content that feels quite remote from my echo chamber. It's at the early stages of this slight diversification in content, I think, that I start getting fed Mormon content. Don't get me wrong, I'm not offended by seeing things outside my echo chamber. I think that is extremely important and we need to diversify and critique our opinions over and over again. However, I do find it particularly interesting because I don't consider myself a religious person, and I know that the majority of people that I interact with online by sending reels, aren't religious either. And I realized this isn't unique to me. When I looked into it further, Mormon content is huge. There is a significant proportion of Mormon influencers online, which is actually quite disproportionate to the number of Mormons in the world. It's quite a small religion, but a very powerful one. So it got me thinking about why this is, and I wanted to unpack the values that underpin this content. So most of the time, Mormon content is predominantly faced by women, usually white, and usually mothers. In many ways, the videos promote a sort of typical trad wife content. So trad wife or traditional wives is a term that refers to women who choose to stay at home. I'm going to say choose here, but we're going to unpack that a little bit later. Usually with children and working husbands, adhering to traditional gender roles and the ideals of family life as promoted by white America in the 1950s. Accordingly, it's very often linked to very far-right ideals and also white supremacy. Tradwives typically respond to criticisms that what they're doing is anti-feminist by using choice feminism. Choice feminism is the idea that any choice a woman makes is inherently feminist because it was made autonomously by them. It kind of furthers the idea that we're living in this post-feminist society where political feminism is no longer necessary. So it gives the illusion that women are just making these choices in a vacuum, completely unrelated to any internalized misogyny that might exist, the patriarchy and patriarchal values that they themselves might uphold, but also that the community around them upholds. I'll explore this notion of feminism a little bit later, but as you can probably tell, I don't find it particularly feminist, but we'll get back to it. So, I kind of thought that this content was being fed to me as sort of an effort to diversify my echo chamber. So I was like, slay Instagram, I like this for you. But then I watched Shan Spear's video and I realized that's probably not what's happening here. Could it be that I'm being fed this more overtly conservative content because actually the content that I already consume has these underlying conservative values, just not so obvious? Maybe my Instagram feed and my TikTok feed that are so heavily bombarded with reels about girlhood, clean girl aesthetic, that girl, I'm just a girl dinner, etc., are actually problematic and indicating a subconscious and underlying increase in conservatism among our generation? Or are these just promoting a reclamation of our girlhood and our femininity in a fun and ironic way? And with all these questions brewing, I couldn't help but think about the elephant in the room. And that's not just because this elephant has an atrocious spray tan and a hairpiece that looks like it has a mind of its own. I think many people in left-leaning chambers, echo chambers, were pretty upset and shocked when they found out that Trump won the US election. I know that I was. But I think when we look at the exit poll statistics, and I want to raise here, exit poll statistics are not always accurate, and usually we will see some more thorough results come out once more investigation and analysis has been done. But I do think that when we look at these exit poll statistics, it paints a very interesting picture about the way that Gen Z is going, and it may not be what you would think. But essentially, exit poll statistics showed that in the age bracket of Gen Z, so in the age bracket of 18 to 29, which is majority Gen Z really, votes for Trump increased by 6% since the 2020 election, with a 5% decrease for Democrats. Although I had been reading articles about the rising polarization between men and women, particularly in Gen Z, in relation to their political values, I don't think I'd expected so many women to also vote Republican. Overall, there was an increase among women by 2% for red votes. I think one of the most startling dichotomies in the stats was that 54% of white women voted for Trump and only 7% of black women. So we are seeing a very strong polarization and dichotomy between lots of different groups, and I think we really need to look at the values that are being promoted and shared and trending in circles that are typically dominated by white women. Even when we think certain content is harmless, we need to be really critical. So as Madison Brown insightfully suggested in her video entitled The Rise in Conservatism Among Gen Z, the signs for a more conservative Gen Z have been there all along, just not in the polling booths, but on our social media feeds. In an article for Vogue, Emma Spector interviewed Sarah Peterson, who said, "It's not a fluke that many of the most celebrated trad momfluencers are also members of patriarchal religions. You're much more likely to find a beautiful white momfluencer looking blissed out at her stovetop surrounded by scores of children if she's evangelical or Mormon, two religions that celebrate traditional gender roles and the idea of gender essentialism. A man is naturally good at some things, leading, financial support, mowing the lawn, while a woman is naturally good at other things, childcare, domestic labour, being pretty." These are explicitly baked into conservative religions. So when looking at the Mormon influencer niche, I think it's important to understand what the Mormon religion is and what it stands for and where it fits in the world, right? So the Mormon faith comprises of only 17 million members worldwide, yet it is the wealthiest religious organization in the world. And when I say the Mormon faith, I am referring to the Jesus Christ Church of the Latter-day Saints. I'm aware there are lots of different branches of the Mormon faith, but I am referring to this specific one. And the reason I use the term Mormon is because the articles and the content that I've been consuming to help research for this video have used the terms interchangeably. So just in case you're confused, I wanted to highlight that from the start. Now, to put this into context, it was reported that as of 2023, the church's net worth was estimated by external sources to be around $265 billion US dollars, which was up almost $29 billion US dollars from the year before. The Mormon Church reports much smaller statistics about their wealth, although they are still quoting in the tens of billions of dollars. It is very tricky to find out what exactly they're using as their measure of wealth, but they have been quoted to say that their wealth comes from tithing money. There is a mandate within the Mormon Church that members must donate 10% of their salary to the Mormon Church, which the Mormon Church then says that they use to maintain upkeep in the church, help with operations. The church is extremely powerful, and I don't mean just financially, it's powerful politically as well. Although the church has in recent times encouraged members not to just vote single party, they are typically reliably a Republican voting demographic in the US. And this comes down to their very traditional values promoted in relation to gender norms, with gender essentialism being almost a core tenet of their religion. I think one of the most obvious signs that gender essentialism is important is when their 13th president, Ezra Taft Benson, stated that women have qualities of faithfulness, benevolence, and charity that balance out the more aggressive and competitive nature of a man. So women are hence seen as homemakers, with many ex-Mormon or Mormon women stating that because of this strong gender essentialist narrative within their communities, they've actually been discouraged from attending college, from getting a job, and been outwardly explicitly told that their only role is homemaking. Oh, and another thing about Mormon women, they're everywhere online right now. I think it's really interesting also to raise that Alyssa Grenfell, who's a YouTuber who used to be part of the Mormon religion and explains a lot of her experiences as a woman in the church, has raised this theory where she believes that the church is indirectly paying Mormon influencers through AdSense. It's a fascinating video. You should definitely go and check it out if you're interested. Very, very important to note that the church has neither confirmed nor denied this theory, and there isn't a lot of other content online which bolsters her theory. I just think it's really interesting, especially when the Mormon church itself has a massive focus on outreach and missionary service. It has been known to advertise on TV, online, and on social media overtly. So whether or not it would be too ridiculous of an idea that it would advertise covertly through influencers is a very interesting thought. So enter Ballerina Farm, or Hannah Nealman, a Mormon-raised mother who lives with her multi-million-dollar husband on a farm in Utah, making extremely successful mum content online, showcasing her perfect family life. She's young, blonde, wealthy, and seemingly the perfect mother to her 8 little ones. Respect. Put some respect on her name. And has managed to escape the shackles of capitalism by living in the countryside. Oh, so cottagecore. Now, there are tons of videos analysing her situation, and I'm aware that I'm exceptionally late to the bandwagon if we're going to be talking about Ballerina Farm, and that's not exactly what I'm here to do. If you're unfamiliar with her, there was an article posted by the New York Times about her and her family and essentially their Mormon tradwife empire. She also has resisted using the term tradwife to describe herself. She ended up being unhappy with the outcome of the article because it essentially depicted a less than ideal power dynamic existing between her husband and herself, with the article suggesting that she wasn't actually happy with her life and that she would have rather pursued a different career. I also really want to say here, I'm not trying to disrespect motherhood or stay-at-home mothers at all. I think it is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and I think that we should be respecting mothers more so than ever. What I find damaging about the content that's promoted by tradwives and typically Mormon mothers is that it very rarely canvasses the hardships and realities of what it is to be a mother. It's depicted in this fairy tale escapist narrative where being a subservient member of the family is somehow idealized as the only thing that women are capable of doing. The reason I bring up Hannah Nealman is because of this video, and you may have seen it, but essentially to give you some context behind the video, it's Hannah's birthday and her charming husband, I say that ironically, has bought her a gift. Reminder, he is extremely wealthy. His father owns an airline company, which is relevant. So let's cue the video now.
Okay, that's my birthday present from Daniel. Hoping they're tickets to Greece.
Where's it from?
I don't know, the boys took it off.
I took it off.
So, plane tickets? Ooh! A hat I can wear in Greece.
It's not a hat.
It's not.
Oh, my egg apron!
Eggs in it.
Great, they can gather eggs.
So cute. It's really cute. It's a cute one.
Yeah, that's the best. You're welcome.
Thanks, honey.
This video reminds me so much of that video of that little boy, and he's opening a gift and they've given him an avocado.
Avocado. Thanks.
But it's layered. This is so much darker. In Hannah's case, though, it should be said that she's done an incredible job in marketing her lifestyle and using influencing as a job. She is essentially a breadwinner in her family, just like her husband is. And so the dynamic is slightly different to other trad wives who don't post online and often don't have an income at all. Although she isn't so vocal in this space, many trad wives use their image to speak out against feminism, suggesting that feminism has forced women to pursue an education which simply causes more debt for the family, and God forbid they go to work, because that will disrupt their true calling as mothers.
We are not going to raise our daughters based off the very small off chance that they might not get married. We wouldn't want our daughters to wander around confused after they graduate high school and, in college, jumping from major to major and just racking up a ton of debt. We want our daughters to be available to maybe any friends, or if we have multiple daughters, for when our sons start having kids, to be available to help out with their children, even when they're single, to just be flexible, and when they're mothers, to have any adventure that they do be home-based so that they are able to be present for their own families. And that is really how you change the generations, is by really instilling the legacy of homemaking into your children.
Essentially, I think this anti-feminist rhetoric kind of plays on the rising concern that following traditional corporate or girl boss pathways won't provide the financial means to support women who continue to bear the brunt of domestic chores and housework at home, regardless of whether or not they're the breadwinner within their family. The imbalance of domestic labor is then heightened by an imbalance in pay gap. The gender pay gap is still a thing, which happens in their workplace. So you have women who are working harder in both spaces, both at home and at work, which is obviously causing issues. Even harder for non-white, able-bodied cisgender women. In one article, the author suggested that working women in neoliberal circles are attracted to this flavor of Mormon and tradwife content from an anthropological perspective, suggesting that the apparent peace, passion, and purpose of conservative marriage depicted offers an allure not found in their own lives. We're tired of the myth that we can have it all when the system is still not designed to allow women to do so. But aside from this attractive allure and anthropological perspective, there is also another factor at play which has driven some of the success of these women online, and that's irony. Various articles online point to Gen Z's obsession with irony, absurdism, and nihilism, and often they point to this very real feeling of existentialism, especially within our current context and the world that we're being raised in, which has issues of climate change, various global crises, the cost of living crisis, and these rising feelings of hopelessness in what we can actually do about it. But the thing is with irony, and Gen Z irony specifically, is that we've gone so far that we sometimes can't even tell what's ironic and what's not anymore. It's explained well in this article by news.co.uk. The author writes, "The most superficial layer is sarcasm, saying the opposite of what you mean. This play on expectations and convention is true to the traditional dictionary definition of irony. The next layer is post-irony, when irony becomes genuine again. For example, enjoying a trashy reality TV show could be post-ironic, beginning as a light-hearted opportunity for sarcastic critique, and 7 seasons later, ending in genuine enjoyment. But the final Gen Z originating layer is meta-irony, purposefully awkward. Meta-irony involves difficult to determine irony, intent on leaving the audience confused and almost concerned." So when characters like Nara Smith enter our social media feeds with her soft, airy voice, feminine outfits, and perfectly manicured makeup in the kitchen, describing the Cheez-Its crackers that she's making from scratch because her husband and children asked for them. We don't know what to make of it. Initially, it does feel like a hilarious parody on tradwives and characters like Hannah Nealman. Yet as more and more of her content shows her cooking various meals, never for herself and always for someone else in the family, most of which would also 100% be easier to just go down to the store and purchase. Some of the funniest comments on her videos are, "Girl, how far is the store?" It does then gain an eerie undertone though. The internet cannot figure her out. Has she got us all in a chokehold and laughing behind the scenes at her incredibly strategic comedic publicity stunt? Or is this her legitimate daily life as a Mormon tradwife? So far she's leaning into the latter, although she has raised some comments saying that she's not a hardcore Mormon and that she's sort of exploring her religion, although I do believe that Lucky B. Smith, her husband, is Mormon himself. They're Mormon, they're just not allegedly hardcore Mormon, but she must be aware that this confusion online is one of the main reasons for why she's gaining so much traction. The thing is, the irony of this content distracts from the oppressive role that Smith is promoting and playing as a subservient member of her marriage and family. Nara's responded to criticisms that she's promoting traditional patriarchal gender roles with the following. "In no way am I saying this is normal or this is something people have to do in order to be a certain way. Whether it's a meal idea or a home-cooked meal I've made my toddler or my soothing voice or whatever it is, I just put my content out there to inspire people. Everyone can take whatever they want from my content." I hope you enjoyed that rendition. This feels like a bit of a dismissive reaction to these concerns about feminism. We're not watching to actually find out how you made the Cheez-Its. Sorry, but none of us have the time to make Cheez-Its from scratch. We're watching because it's absurd. But here's where I think it gets even more interesting, because I can't really keep speaking about the internet's reaction to Nara Smith without discussing the Madonna complex. For those who aren't watching the video and are just listening, that second word I cannot say on certain platforms, but it rhymes with door. So the Madonna dichotomy is a theory coined by one of the more controversial names in psychology, Freud, suggesting that under the male gaze, women are either regarded as pure, saintly and good, or over-sexualized, promiscuous and bad, or nothing in between. Now, I'll be the first to admit that Freud is never really the best source when it comes to psychology, but I think that he kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit with this one. I think that it would be disingenuous to suggest that this has absolutely no standing in the way that society views women. Essentially, as the internet continued to be stunned by Smith's performative role as a tradwife, social media users responded with parodies, where they would pretend to be her and sometimes her husband as well, hypersexualizing her, suggesting that actually offline she's extremely promiscuous and not at all like this pure saintly figure. Obviously, it's funny on the one hand because yes, she's putting out this unrealistic expectation of who she is, and then there's this flip in response to the image that she's portraying. But I think that this highlights this complex quite interestingly, that we have to put people, and specifically women, in these boxes, and there can never be any nuance in between. While we're discussing this dichotomy, I think another really interesting portrayal in Mormon culture was shown in the recent TV show, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Let's get into this. This was interesting. I have a lot to say. Essentially, if you're unfamiliar, which I was before I started filming this video, the show follows a group of Mormon mothers who blew up on TikTok due to their less conventional Mormon lifestyles, particularly following a public scandal where the women claimed to engage in soft swinging and partner sharing. The women in the show openly push back against the tradwife expectations fueled by their religion, with content creator Taylor Frankie Paul stating, "We were supposed to be the housewives serving every desire of men." I thought, that. I think what's really important when discussing these women is to note that they were all married extremely young, some with children as young as 16, who for the first time in their lives in this show and on TikTok as well, are figuring out who they are and where they stand within their extremely conservative patriarchal family dynamics and within their broader community, with some mothers on the show quoting that they were supposed to or encouraged to have children by the age of 21 and were encouraged not to go to college, not to pursue a career. So I think it's very important when looking at this TV show to actually note how far they have pushed back to try and have these conversations about where they belong and who they are. In an article for the New York Times, it was stated that these women are engaged in ongoing discussion about, among other subjects, the social conservatism of Mormonism, in which chastity is a virtue, homosexuality is a sin, and the father is the presiding authority in his family, and whether they can change the culture of the church and also the broader world, including their own families. Now, many view the show as abrasive, quick to cast these women on the other end of the Madonna dichotomy, almost offended by the fact that these women are affiliated with stereotypically conservative religions, yet haven't offered us the dreamy tried-wife content that we hold so dear. How dare they? And the show even feeds into this dichotomy itself by separating the women into two different categories, the saints and the sinners. Yet in an article for The Atlantic, it highlights that the pushback shown by these women is still significantly influenced by the patriarchal and misogynistic value system in which they exist. In the article, Gilbert writes, Taylor says that the group built its following in the hope of changing people's attitudes about Mormon women and making space for them to be bolder and more outspoken than the norm. But all of the women in the show seem to have wholly absorbed the idea that to be heard as mothers in America, you first have to be seen in high definition, expensively augmented perfection. And is that really their fault when Western culture so frequently devalues what it means to be a mother? In Sheila Hattie's book, Motherhood, it was said, "It seemed to me like all my worrying about not being a mother came down to this history, this implication that a woman is not an end in herself. She is a means to a man who will grow up to be an end in himself and do something in the world, while a woman is a passageway through which a man might come. I have always felt like an end in myself. Does not everyone? But perhaps my doubt that being an end in myself is enough comes from this deep lineage of women, not being seen as ends, but as passageways through which a man might come." Gilbert, in her article again, states that the pursuit of a certain kind of highly maintained beauty for all 8 women on the show seems to dominate everything else. And shockingly, at least for an outsider, the value placed on beauty is extremely promoted by the church, which we later find out in the series. Despite bans on alcohol, drugs, and many other vices, plastic surgery, not a problem. So although at times the show is very clunky and not perfect, with internalized misogyny rife within these women's relationships, it highlights an ongoing conversation within many conservative religions that position women as subservient and of little voice when it comes to who they choose to be. Now, this all seems pretty obvious, right? Like when we look in conservative spaces, we're going to find some gender essentialist traditional norms that are going to be promoted both online and offline by those within those spaces. That makes sense. But gender essentialist ideals aren't exclusive to Mormon women on the internet at all, and have been floating around pretty obviously in other more mainstream content in the last couple of years. The girlification of seemingly everything may seem innocent and silly, and definitely amusing and ironic at times, but it does have some more questionable undertones about how we're representing women. In a fabulous journal article by Macy Browning Karasik, she explored the following: how the clean girl aesthetic, girl dinner, and girl math reveal how girl culture necessitates women's constant self-improvement and bodily discipline to emulate narrow beauty standards, regulates their consumption habits according to the traditional gender roles, and shapes their decision-making around capitalist logic. In a video by Shan Spears, she suggests that this trend seems to come off the back of the "I'm not like other girls" trend, which was pretty apparent and popular in the 2010s, with it being way cooler to be friends with guys than it was with girls, because being a girl was apparently inherently embarrassing. Anyway, glad we're over that. She suggests that maybe this obsession and trend of girlhood is a pushback and a reclamation of our youths and of our femininity. But she also suggests it has this heavy overtone of infantilization, as well as returning to innocence, purity, and daintiness, which is couched in whiteness, especially as white women continue to be the face of these trends. In relation to the clean girl aesthetic, in Karasik's article, she writes that the clean girl's embodiment of cleanliness is largely reliant upon her adherence to conventional and predominantly white beauty standards. In reality, she says, it just promotes women's constant self-fashioning via consumerism. And this is not to mention that the slick back hairstyles that are typically the kind of icon of what it means to be a clean girl actually comes from South Asian culture. And this video explains it really well.
But it's on a white girl with straight hair, clear skin. It's pretty?
Right.
Wait, what about when I did it 8 years ago? Oh, I got made fun of for it. We were called smelly. We were told to wash our hair because there was too much oil in it. So it only upsets me because it was a point of insecurity for a lot of us girls at one point because we were ridiculed for it.
Absolutely.
But all of a sudden, it's now the next TikTok For You page trending thing.
Women can never just exist. Who we are is so heavily linked with how we present ourselves, the clothes that we wear, the aesthetic we choose to fit into, the way we do our makeup, which all has to align with the music we like, the hobbies we do, the way we eat, what we eat. And at every stage, these aspects of our identities are commodified. You can't be X without purchasing Y, and if you don't purchase Y, then you're considered less than. This suggests that without engaging in self-empowering, quote-unquote, spending, a woman's value is hindered. It feels very similar to the types of feminism which are espoused in women can do it all propaganda, such as Ivanka Trump's book called, side note, who knew that I would make an episode which so heavily involves the Trump family? Random. Anyway, Ivanka Trump's book called Women Who Work, which, as Catherine Rottenberg stated in a journal article, fabulous by the way, you should go and read it, that the book is composed of jargon which could just as easily been found by Googling inspirational quotes. That's like the best dig I've ever heard. Essentially, Ivanka Trump describes a woman's success as limited only by one's own hunger, drive, and passion, and that to create one's own ideal life, all you need to do is make the right choices and work really, really hard. Wow, Ivanka Trump, that is so unhelpful to the majority of women who exist in this world with so many different barriers to you. But alas, we move on. Rottenberg says that this book encourages women to consider themselves as a form of stock, where their normative role is to augment their market value. This entails incessant labor, particularly the modification of behavior, aspirations, and effective orientation, much like a corporation that alters its practices in an attempt to increase its stock's value by becoming more efficient. My mind was blown. Or we can look at girl dinner, the trend where women make seemingly atrocious or tragic meals, which are kind of just a concoction of random bits and bobs that they found in their pantry, and call it a dinner. Off the back, it kind of seems feminist, right? Like you've got this idea where it's like, oh, we're pushing back from the gender norms that women are in the kitchen and we need to always make nutritious meals and dinner. But there's a real subtext also that straying from this norm is problematic and lazy, and that indulging in a lazy girl dinner can't be done unless it's cute or performative and posted on TikTok. As the trend evolved also, there was another dimension where the food shown or the girl dinner shown became increasingly less nutritious and smaller portion sizes, to the point where I saw a couple videos, obviously ironic, where it's a bowl of ice with a fork and a little bow, with the caption girl dinner. This also suggests that women should be preoccupied with being thin. And then there's girl math, which is possibly one of the more overtly misogynistic trends, where women explain their purchases by using nonsensical logic, like saying, oh, this $200 jacket is essentially free because I just won't buy a $5 coffee for 40 days, right? And it essentially highlights this underlying text that women are stupid and don't understand finances. It further ingrains a stereotype of mindless consumption and poor self-management. In a quote by Gill, the use of irony in post-feminist media culture is a way of having it both ways, of expressing sexist statements that are subsequently excused through ironic framing as both harmless and humorous. And I think we can also see this in the I'm just a girl trend, where you literally see people who have gotten into a car crash with the caption, I'm just a girl, to suggest that recklessness, shopping addictions signify some sort of inherent hopelessness in women, that women, oh, I'm just a girl, like I'm just accidentally tripped and fell, and now I bought the whole of Sephora. Why is having no agency or autonomy cute. This is really scary because it suggests that a lack of agency in relation to our actions. It suggests that we're infantilizing ourselves based on our gender. In a video by Ashley Viola, she said that comedy can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the ironic girlification of seemingly everything, lest we forget rat girl, is all in good fun and relatively harmless on its face, but it does seem to represent a desire to reject being or becoming a woman. We'd all much rather be 25-year-old teenage girls than admit we are grown-ass women. Womanhood is hard, complex, highly criticized at every stage, which is even more enhanced when you're not white, cis, straight, able-bodied, or thin. Perhaps the adoption of the title girl is much like the admiration for tradwife content, fairy tale escapism from the realities of what it means to be a woman, trying but failing to do it all, because the system isn't designed to allow us to succeed in the ways that characters like Ivanka Trump suggest we can. I don't necessarily think that all clean girls are going to become tradwives, but I think that the values and themes underlying this content, at least the attraction to the content, are more similar than not. And if the lifestyle doesn't necessarily show a direct pipeline, I do think our algorithms do, because the underlying values underpinning the content are traditional value norms, whether they're ironic or not. Yes, we can engage in the content under the guise of irony, but to deny these conservative gender norms underpinning them would be disingenuous. My concern is that as we continue to infantilize ourselves and use the phrase girl, even if it's ironic, even if it's comedy, we dehumanize what it means to be a woman, and we put ourselves in these boxes which don't allow us to be messy, different, unique, have diverse and layers identities which are not being pioneered in the media industry and online right now. We're oversimplifying our identities and stereotyping ourselves as lazy, silly, and one-dimensional, as well as objectifying ourselves. And I'm not putting the blame on us entirely. I'm putting the blame on the system, but I'm also raising awareness that we need to be hypercritical when we engage in this content as well, because we do need to push back from these stereotypes that have defined the patriarchy for so long. But alas, we have come to the end of the video, and to leave it on a lighter note, I think that we're seeing some really fabulous pushback of these girl trends and tradwives. We are seeing a new woman, a new trendy woman come through, messy and diverse and layered, and I think some of the awesome people in pop culture that are portraying this woman is Charlie XCX and Lola Young. So I think that's exciting, and I really hope that we're going to see more diversity when it comes to women online. I guess we're leaving on a bit of a strange note, but I just want to say again, thank you so much for your engagement in my content. It really means the world. And if you did like this episode, please like it on YouTube and subscribe if you're watching and listening on there. And if you're on Spotify, please rate my podcast because it really helps. And if you have any specific questions, you can also message me or direct message me on Instagram, which I will leave in the caption on all platforms. I will see you shortly. I promise it won't be a matter of months next time, I pinky swear. From the Diving Board is a show hosted by me, Charlie Chats, dedicated to decoding digital culture by unpacking the hidden politics behind the screen.